Well, joining me now is Councillor Keith Gregory, who you just saw in that report from Kieran Jenkins, and Bill Brereton, a former Deputy Police Commissioner here in North Wales. Well, Keith Gregory, do you have any confidence now that you'll be listened to and believed in these latest inquiries?
I'm quite hopeful. I'm quite confident, to be honest, now that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the Welsh Assembly have promised not to leave no stones unturned, and that I'm quite hopeful. The
Waterhouse inquiry promised that, though, last time. What gives you that hope that things will be different now?
I think if people have changed the views of the views that people seen, used to think about.
The culture's changed.
Yeah, culture change, that's what it is.
Bill Brereton, we've had dozens of police investigations, more than a dozen council inquiries, the Waterhouse report, all of these inquiries, and yet so few convictions. Why do you think that is?
I think there's lots of reasons. I mean, for me, the way forward is quite properly to have an outside force investigation, and that's being called for, as I understand it. I think it's very important that right up front, everyone is required to declare whether they have been or currently are a Mason. Section 81 of the Waterhouse report touches on it very fleetingly. It may or may not be a problem, but let's have it out in the open and make sure that people know what's going on.
Well, because the Masons were, and maybe still are, very powerful here. I mean, do you think there were people being protected by pillars of the establishment?
I don't know. I mean, you know, there's an investigation to be done, and clearly that's not me because I'm retired. But the fact that the questions there needs solving, it needs clearing once and for all, and the suggestion that there could be undue influences has to be dealt with. I was never a Mason, never have been, never will be, and I was always very clear on that, and therefore it never touched upon me. But I think it's that concern that if you don't know, you just don't know what's going on in the background.
Keith Gregory, are the Masons an avenue that needs to be investigated?
Masons definitely need to be investigated, especially in North Wales. I think nearly everyone, especially on the list that I have, are all members of some sort of Masonic lodge.
The Prime Minister's spoken today about the danger of a witch hunt, and you've got to say that a lot of these allegations relate to many decades ago. You're relying on people's memories. How much of a concern do you think that is?
I don't think it'll ever turn into a witch hunt. I hope it doesn't, but we are getting people coming forward, really upset people. So
you think it's the scale of allegations about the past that is emerging now? It's not a witch hunt, but it's just the scale of people who've been affected by this that you're interested in? Yeah,
it is. It's genuine, honest people coming forward with a story to tell, which they were never allowed to do last time.
Bill Brereton, you think there's a danger of witch hunt?
Well, I think any society should be judged how it deals with vulnerable people. And as I understand it, the Prime Minister said something about gays. This isn't about gays, it's about paedophilia, which is, it's a completely different issue. Two consenting adults, fine, but, this is not that. And I think, it's the test of society is how we deal with people who are vulnerable. And these were vulnerable people, and they weren't treated properly, and they should be.
Bill Brereton, Keith Gregory, thank you very much for joining me.
Sarah is in East Dulwich. Sarah, what would you like to say this morning?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
I'm a little nervous, so bear with me.
Of course I shall.
I have personal experience, unfortunately. I was in residential care in the 70s and 80s and was sexually abused by my parents and by the staff, and was taken by the staff members to the homes of very wealthy, famous people and abused. And I reported it throughout my childhood, and nobody did anything. And then in the late 90s, I had to go to the job centre, and there, when I got there, was a newspaper on the desk that had an investigation into the home that I was in. And so that shattered my world, because suddenly the things that I had been trying to tell myself for years that I was making up, there they were in black and white, in print. And when I went to the police station and spoke with them, they told me that they already knew my name because so many people had spoken of me. I tried to go for a criminal prosecution and was told I didn't have enough evidence, that my memory was too scattered, and that they couldn't do anything. I tried to go for a civil prosecution and was told that it would be unfair to the perpetrators, as I had a social service file that I could look back at and refresh my memory, whereas the abusers didn't. When I met with one of the solicitors and the QC, they sat laughing as they said, "Let's hope you don't get Judge such and such, because he is known to be the paedophile's friend." There is a cover-up here. There is also people... Is it?
I mean, you're certain, because I don't think anyone would dispute that the plausibility of there being paedophiles in positions of power in any organisation. It's a statistical certainty, but the leap from that to the notion that they are all somehow in cahoots with each other, this phrase network, perhaps, that is harder.
That's the very nature of paedophilia. And to quickly reference this thing about...
You don't have to be quick, Sarah. You don't have to be...
Sorry, there's so much I want to say, because I'm sick to death of putting the radio on, and okay, it's Friday today, but Mystery Hour, hello, I like Mystery Hour. You want to listen to the radio? I want to be taken away. Let's see what we can hear today.
Yes.
And here is my past just vomited at me on a daily basis at the moment.
Inevitably, that, I'm afraid, but I understand your discomfort.
Yes. And, people didn't come forward, not just because they were scared, people came forward. I began being raped at the age of 12 weeks. Doctors knew. Nurses knew. Police knew. Nobody did anything. I was thrown at a wall by my mother. At 2 years old, my teeth were knocked out. I was taken to the hospital by the social worker and found to have a herpes infection in my mouth, and was given back to my mum, being told that I had to have time to bond with her. What did the doctors do? What did the social services do?
They looked the other way. They looked the other way, Sarah.
Evil prospers when good people do nothing.
Indeed it does, but it doesn't prove that they were part of a web, does it? I don't think you're even suggesting that.
No, not the doctors necessarily, but I think the very way a paedophile network works is that there is a cover-up. You don't go around saying, "I like having sex with children." This is not what they're doing. So how do they
find each other then, do you think?
I think there are broad groups. I think there are secret handshakes, all of that sort of stuff. I think there's a disgusting kind of attraction to each other. But there seems to be a behaviour. You know how the way a paedophile knows, I choose that child over this child. This child will keep their mouth shut.
That was the most... yes, you're right. The first day we talked about this, someone told me that, and I've checked the research since, and it's sound, the idea that if you go into a prison where child abusers are held and show them 30 photographs of 30 different children, they will all identify the same one or two as being the most likely victim, and that's from a two-dimensional photograph.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there's a shared psychopathy, or a shared pathology, I think they would call it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're all very similar sorts of people, And the idea, it's like no more than a burglar has a bag over his shoulder that says swag. Paedophiles aren't in raincoats. They're not all unattractive people. Many of them are very handsome, charming people. The rapes aren't always violent. These people are seducers. That's what they do. That's what the whole thing is about. That's why it's so pernicious. Because as an adult now, I'm still in recovery from everything that's happened.
Of course.
Having had to claim benefits, unable to work due to flashbacks, due to the physical results of what's happened to me. So then I bear the backlash of all these people on benefits and all this stuff. This is...
Well, not here.
I think this is just the beginning. And I would ask everybody to write to their MP and say, change the law that says to people who've been abused, you only have 3 years from your date of knowledge to bring people to justice. If you really care about children, please write to your MP, write to the people in power and say, you have to change this law. How many people have come forward about Jimmy Savile? Something like 400 people.
But there are cases of historic abuse leading to convictions. But would they have had to have come, so that those cases would have been revisited, would they?
James, mine was such a case. Mine was such a case. The children's home that I was in, the police told me in the end, we know about you because so many people have mentioned that you were there. They made films of us. We were forced to engage with each other while they filmed. And I'm told, fortunately, the technology is such that those pictures won't be on the internet at the moment. There was a paedophile ring operating there for a 50-year period, just sending fresh, vulnerable children to there. Mine is a case of ritualistic, satanic. It does happen. Don't close your eyes to it. Don't close your ears to it. This is happening. And the way you keep yourself safe is to be vigilant all the time.
If I close my eyes or ears to the satanic element, it's no different to agnosticism or atheism. I don't think it necessarily needs to be a cruel position.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you're telling me people believe in Satan. I know that's true.
It's not so much that people believe in Satan, it's that people believe in Satan and sacrifice children in the process of following those beliefs. That people, I can't even say some of the stuff. There may be children listening, and people don't really want to hear it. As you say, when people say, oh, you were abused as a child, and there's a kind of salaciousness. It's like sort of flicking a peek at page 3 and on to the next thing. This is a life. These are lives. These are lives that are completely destroyed. And actually what they do, I remember Oprah, of all people, going to a prison to speak to some men who were all paedophiles, who were all convicted, multiple convictions for abusing children.